Tony came to me a couple days later and he was like, you know what? The CEO of Shake Shack called me after the launch and said that this is a problem they've been trying to solve for 10 years. And they're more willing to work with DoorDash because we now offer this. Same with a really fancy sushi restaurant in LA called Sugarfish. He's like, I also got an email from that CEO. And so it was that moment where you're like, hey, if we do something bigger than just delivery, it's actually really good for the business. We can help our customers solve their problems too. So again, going back to brand and the power of like brand, it's all right there.
Believe it.
This episode, I have one of the most enlightening conversations on brand with one of the masters, Jen Rapp, the CMO of Superside, the creative team for creative teams. And in this episode, we talk about Jen's really remarkable career. She spent 10 years running brand at Patagonia. She built the DoorDash brand from scratch, wrote copy for Black Diamond, and even before that started as a rock climber. Really a remarkable journey, literally. And in this conversation, Jen talks about how each of these steps really taught her valuable lessons on branding, how in one place she was forced to really tie brand to the analytics and the performance metrics, and how that taught her an important lesson on how to keep brand close to impact. She talked about the role that she has now as CMO of Superside, of being a design as a service company, and the moment that design is having where in-house teams are becoming the norm, and yet they're still not robust enough to take on all the responsibilities that is needed for design in a company. And that's where Superside comes in. We talk about a product that they just launched at the time, which was Superads. Now they've evolved tremendously into offering so much more, but really the idea of building in measuring impact with creative, which is what Superads was. And this conversation happens at a time where Superside unveiled its new brand, which was brilliant and stellar, and really a masterclass in what a brand should be. Check out their website just to get a taste. And she ends the conversation pointing out that brand has made a comeback of sorts. It's always been important. It's always been, a thing you do. But I think people are starting to realize how crucial it is for the business, how it's really the last moat that a business can have. And obviously, I couldn't agree more. So without further ado, please soak up every word. Here is Jen Rapp. Let's go. All right, Jen Rapp, thank you for joining the Believe in Brand podcast. Great to see you.
Yeah, great to be here. Any podcast that's called Believe in Brand, I want to be on it.
There you go. Yeah, I've gotten a lot of good feedback on the name, because I think it's kind of this inner calling of brand people. Like, no, this isn't just a job. It's something you believe in. It's a discipline. It's kind of a way of life. So glad to have a fellow believer on the podcast.
I'm a believer. Glad to be here.
So Jen, you are the CMO of I wouldn't even call it rising. I think it's pretty popular, pretty well-known creative service called Superside. And I heard about you guys before we even connected, even though I'm not a customer at the moment, which says something, because there's a lot out there that we just don't come across and don't know. But you have a pretty interesting background before getting to Superside. So maybe, can you take me back to your beginnings and kind of your career journey before getting to Superside? I know there was some cool, B2C brands in your past. I'd love to hear how you got to where you are.
For sure. So I started my career as a rock climber, of all things. I have been a climber for the last 25 years, if that dates my age. Yeah, sadly. But really found my first job working for a rock climbing company called Black Diamond Equipment. They make like the true rock climbing equipment. When I was in college, I had to work. My parents cut me off at a certain point for bad behavior, which is a whole other story. And I had to get a job. And so I was good at writing, and I got a job as a copywriter. at Black Diamond. And that led into my eventual, like what I like to joke and call my first real job, which was leading PR at Patagonia, the outdoor apparel company. And I spent about a decade at Patagonia, moving from starting out as a product PR person into a corporate PR person to working with Yvon Chouinard directly for many, many years to helping to come up with the company's big campaigns. And that was not a normal like comms experience. And it really taught me how to be a marketer in many, many ways. One, like this goes back to brand. I mean, every single person probably on this that listens to this podcast knows what Patagonia is because of its brand, the strength of its brand. And Yvon Chouinard, the founder, always used to joke and say, like, marketers were we weren't marketers. Marketers were the scum of the earth and we weren't them. And like, we would all kind of laugh and be like, well, Yvon, actually, we are marketers, but we're just doing it in a subtle way. And that's what comms was at Patagonia. It was marketing. It was telling stories that the media would tell on our behalf because we effectively were too cheap to pay for traditional marketing, like ads. And we just didn't do that kind of stuff. So it really taught me how to be a marketer and tell really, really compelling stories that made a company bigger than just a product, because that's what people know and love Patagonia for. And I spent about a decade there, went to Tom's Shoes, which again is a brand that has a lot of heart and was purpose built by Blake Mycoskie, who continues to be a good friend, and learned a little bit about speed at Tom's. Like Patagonia was sort of a dinosaur, moved slow back then. And Tom's taught me a little bit about speed. Also worked at Arc'teryx, leading comms globally for them for many years. They're doing really well these days. But then I made this crazy jump, and I jumped from those cool D2C brands to tech, where I continue to be today. And my first tech job, if you can believe it, was as vice president of marketing for this little company called DoorDash. And DoorDash, at the time, like no one knew what DoorDash was, okay? Like I would tell people I'm helping with marketing at DoorDash, and they'd be like, DoorDash? I thought they stopped making jeans years ago. And I was like, no, DoorDash, not Jordache jeans. And, you know, at the time, Postmates and everyone else was so much cooler because the Kardashians were using Postmates. And Tony Xu, the founder of DoorDash, was like, hey, come build a brand for me. Your kind of marketing really scares me. I like putting $1 into performance marketing and getting $2 out. That kind of marketing I understand, but like brand marketing scares me. But I know that as I stand right now today, like DoorDash is a commodity, and we're not going to win as a commodity. We're going to win as a brand. So kind of, can you come here and help me do that? And that was my transition into tech. Went on to B2B tech, which was another really weird jump for me. Led a big portion of marketing over at Klaviyo. We IPO'd last year, which was a huge moment as a marketer in tech. We all know that is the pinnacle we all aim towards. And now I'm here at Superside. And I'm here at Superside because I was a customer. Because my creative team at Klaviyo used Superside. So hopefully that's a slightly long answer to your question, but
yeah, we could spend a couple of podcasts just on that journey. That's pretty amazing. I mean, what you described, even specifically at DoorDash, where you had a founder saying, I don't get brand, but I know that I need it. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to try, like, I'm going to invest in you to build it, even though it's not how my brain operates. And that's a level of belief that's necessary. It's even on the business side. I know that this is a necessary component, even though this doesn't fit into my skill set. I just need it to happen. And that's pretty impressive that they were able to anticipate that early on.
Frankly, it was him that was able to anticipate that, right? Like he was able to say, look, I know there's something magic when someone creates a brand. I just don't know how to get there. And I'm nervous to invest in it if it fails. And it was interesting when we did my team led the rebranding of DoorDash to what everyone sees today. And in that process, we launched something called Project Dash. And that was where we launched a food rescue program, which was an issue all of our restaurant partners were facing. At the end of the day, they're left with 30 pounds of rice, or they're left with like a bunch of chicken, and they don't want to throw it away, but they also don't know what to do with it. And so we launched this program called Project Dash, where Dashers would go and pick up the food, and then we would pair them with a soup kitchen or a homeless shelter in their neighborhood that would be willing to accept that specific food. It was like leaning into what DoorDash's capabilities really were, which was solving tough logistical problems in a city. We were able to do that. And in the process, Tony Hsu was like, Jen, stop trying to turn me into Yvonne Chouinard or Blake Mycoskie. Like, I'm not a philanthropist. I'm not like whatever. And then we launched it. And I remember like Tony came to me a couple of days later and he was like, you know what? The CEO of Shake Shack called me after the launch and said that this is a problem they've been trying to solve for 10 years. And they're more willing to work with DoorDash because we now offer this. Same with a really fancy sushi restaurant in LA called Sugarfish. He's like, I also got an email from that CEO. And so it was that moment where you're like, hey, if we do something bigger than just delivery, it's actually really good for the business. We can help our customers solve their problems too. So again, going back to brand and the power of like brand, it's all right there.
Yeah, and oh man, we have so much to talk about, and I feel like I want to dive into this. This is, I think, really like a specific pain point within businesses, and maybe even specifically tech, where the idea of deeply investing in activities that aren't directly marketing or selling a product that is the source of your revenue, right? Feels wrong. It feels unnatural. Why would we be spending so much time doing this other thing, even if it's telling a story, but especially if it's some other kind of initiative? Doesn't that feel like a distraction? Doesn't that seem like it's counterintuitive or counterproductive? And yet what you're pointing out is, no, actually, when you invest in things that people care about or people are going to want to pay attention to, and not be kind of manipulated into paying attention to or incentivized unnaturally, they will respond in a way that actually will, exceed the expectations you have in a normal transactional experience. And I think that's the lesson that often it takes, those that don't already get it, it takes them a lot of time to say, should we really be doing this? And those that get it are like, more please, this is where we need to be spending our time. Yeah, I see that all too often.
It's interesting, like businesses exist to solve problems, right? Like whether that's like a Patagonia that's solving the problem of you being cold when you go outside, whether that's Superside solving the problem of a creative team being overworked. And if what you're doing with like the good of your business, if you're solving your customers' problems, you're winning. You're helping your customers win. And that is a win for you as a business. In the case of DoorDash, we had a triple-sided marketplace and we were solving two problems. We were solving the problem of food waste for our restaurant partners. And we were also giving our Dashers an opportunity to do good for a job that like might feel kind of blasé, like being a driver might not always be that great. And yet here's an opportunity for someone to do something good with their time. We've solved two problems in one go, and we've solved the problem of food waste. It's just like, again, if you're solving a customer's problem, that is a good move and a good business decision. And yeah, it builds your brand as an added benefit.
Exactly. Yeah. And I just think like in general, anytime, I think about this all the time. Founders, of course, they get into the business of entrepreneurship to make money. That, we're not going to ignore that point. When there's a big financial opportunity, that's certainly at the core of it. But no one does this thinking it makes sense. This is a really dumb move to found something if you're just trying to make money. There are much better ways of doing it. So
Yeah.
they're doing it because there's something meaningful they're trying to bring into the world. There are people they want to impact. There's an industry they want to revolutionize. And
Mhm.
that involves doing something meaningful. And anytime you're able to rise above the business side of it and do something meaningful, I think there is, ironically, there's something that actually gives back to the business, more effectively than if you're just trying to bring in that buck. So, yeah, that's a really great example
Absolutely.
of the believe in brand mentality.
The unique thing about DoorDash was that Tony Shu was like, Jen, I'm going to hire you. I'm going to manage you like I would manage a performance marketer. So you don't get to do anything frivolous. You will be held to the same, like we will look at CAC, we will look at the LTV of the customers your brand efforts bring in. Like you're going to have to learn how to be a really analytical marketer here at DoorDash. And that was a really cool challenge for me because I came from an extremely unanalytical background. Patagonia, like we weren't looking at analytics. We were like, does this climb look badass? It's just, I did not come from an analytical background. And yet that was a really cool challenge that I bet a lot of people who have gone from D2C into tech have been asked to rise to. All the brand marketers today are being asked to exercise both the right and left side of their brains.
Whoa, very cool. I have questions. Were there
Yeah.
metrics that you were being asked to measure yourself by that you didn't agree with or you felt like would be a trap for marketing? And were there was there a process of trying to find the right way to measure it? Because I mean, it's pretty well known that if you try and measure, awareness, let's say, which is obviously a part of brand marketing, with its ability to drive short-term leads, pipeline, you're losing that battle, right? That's not what it's for. And if you
Yeah.
try and measure it that way, you're going to run out of budget very fast. What was that process like of like aligning on how to measure this properly?
Yeah. So DoorDash was a unique example in that we were like a hyper growth company focused deeply on acquisition, very little on retention, and in fact, very little on awareness. We didn't talk a lot about like raising brand awareness when I was there. But the metrics I would still be held to were things like new customer acquisition, app downloads. And so we would have to come up with like brand programs that helped reach those goals. A great example was this idea that one of the men on the sale, I think on the biz dev team had. He was like the biz dev guy that had a great relationship with Cheesecake Factory. And he was like, Cheesecake Factory wants to do something fun with us. And they came up with this idea of like the team came up with this idea to do a day of like 5,000 slices. And we were going to give away 5,000 free pieces of cheesecake if you download the DoorDash app. Total surprise and delight. No cost to you as a customer. It was a grand success. Media covered it. So there's your awareness. App downloads were maybe higher than they had ever been before within this like 4-hour block where there was available cheesecake. We sold out immediately. And so to me, like that was a perfect brand activation and brand moment for DoorDash, where we achieved company KPIs, new customers. We could then nurture those customers. We could then we could then give them other offers or engage them in other ways. But like that number of app downloads was something I like learned to train myself and my team on focusing on. So like we would do lots of cute things. It had to include an app download. That got trickier at other companies where it's like they were measuring brand awareness, but back then we weren't. Because when you bring things like brand awareness into the equation, you're right. You will lose if you are running a brand campaign and the leads aren't coming in the door. And believe you me, I have lived that. Klaviyo is a great example of that, where you're like, we're doing a brand campaign. And in 2 weeks, everyone's like, cool, where's the leads? And you're like, we're not going to get leads. We're not getting it. We're not. And so there have been times where it's like, you've probably seen this, your listeners have probably seen this, where you all align on like, hey, this is the brand efforts. KPIs. It's going to include awareness. It's going to include frequency. We're basically just trying to like educate people on the fact that, like, for example, Klaviyo is better than MailChimp. And then midway through a campaign, the ask changes. And that's when it gets really frustrating as a brand marketer, where you're like, well, if we wanted a direct response campaign, we wouldn't have built this one. And so that is like times in life when, yes, I have been asked to hit metrics that like maybe the activation or the campaign wasn't built to hit.
Yeah, I definitely feel, I mean, I work in Ireland, which we're talking about C-level executives as target buyers and sales cycles that are in the 6 to 9 month range. Generating demand is not something where we suddenly show up and then they're ready to get a demo. They need to get very comfortable with this thing and even hear it from their peers. It's a very peer-based kind of buying motion. Are you showing up enough that I should take you seriously? And then if I come across something where the value that you deliver is like directly corresponds to a problem I'm trying to solve, I'll take the call. And all of that has to line up, and to try and use awareness and brand marketing to kind of solve that last mile of the problem it's a bit silly if you just kind of look at it at face value. So, but it's interesting. You described brand used to elicit direct response when for a B2C brand that makes a ton of sense. I guess when I was translating that into B2B, that's like, how does that even happen? But it's a very important discipline in general that we should all do, like you said, of like, if I'm not making sure to show, it goes both ways, not only to be measured, but to also show how what I'm doing is impacting the business. There's just going to be a shorter and shorter leash for doing this kind of work and getting, out of it what you're trying to put in.
Yeah. And even today, so for example, with Klaviyo and with Superside, we do a really great job of these things called virtual summits. And to be frank, they're entirely thought leadership based. They are teaching, they're educating, they're like bringing in incredible voices from throughout the community, from all different kinds of businesses. And they happen to be one of the strongest lead gen tools we have today at Superside. And ultimately, like, these virtual summits could be perceived as like a brand builder. We're helping to establish ourselves as like leaders and thought leaders in the creative and marketing space. But they are driving incredible amounts of leads of our ICP, which is the enterprise technology company. And we are continually wowed at the fact that like something that would appear on the surface to be so brand forward is actually one of our greatest lead gen tools. So I think it's like, when we would joke about it, like with my team at Klaviyo, we would call it brand formance. And it would be like, hey, everything we have to do is brand formance. Like, it has to still impact the business's bottom line.
Yeah, absolutely. I've heard of brand gen. I'm currently trying to work out something called brand demand, one word. So there's certainly a lot here. And I think it highlights an interesting thing that we both wanted to cover in this conversation of how to bring these two worlds that feel like they are complete opposites together, because they are both part of one whole. The two worlds being the science of revenue generation and building a sustainable business through marketing, at least in terms of this call, and the art of creating something meaningful, special, compelling that will be the thing that will drive that business. Yet art is by nature not something that corresponds to a math equation or to a cause and effect in and out. And there's always seems to be this friction between, how do I get these two things to play together? How do I get a business to invest in art in order to drive more business? And how do I get art to be measured by the science of it? And you mentioned this was something that you had to figure out how to solve with DoorDash and others, and you even built a product in Superside about that. I'd love for you to kind of expand on what that tension is like in your world, how do you grapple with it, and a little about that product you built.
Yeah, it's hard because there are times, Ari, where I'm like, holy cow, brand and when demand gen try to act like one another, they both fail, right? If you go too far on the like brand side of trying to drive direct response, it's just, it misses the mark, and vice versa. There is that school of thought of like, let the brand marketers do what they're really good at, which is like building heart, building soul, like telling a story, creating that interest and creating that, awareness, but also like creating the demand, making someone really want your product because it's going to solve their problem. And then demand gen brings them into the door of the house. It's like when you try to have them combine forces, like it's not always the best result. That said, like today, when you look at demand gen, and a huge part of what I do today as a non-analytical CMO is demand gen, you hear a lot about like creative is the new targeting. And you hear that like we've all got equal democratic access to all these incredible tools, whether it's LinkedIn, Facebook, CTV, whatever. It's all, but we all have access to it, right? You used to be able to like be really good at like targeting and doing all these things. Well, that's kind of an even playing field now. And what matters is creative. And is your creative performing? And Superside has this incredible creative machine that puts out some of the most hilarious, funny, great ads ever. Go to our website, you'll be retargeted with them, and you will laugh and you will love them. And you'll get to know who we are as a brand. But the challenge is also today for that creative side of marketing to understand what is performing. And normally that has been left to the performance marketers, the analytical side of the business that's in the Facebook account going like, this one performs, this one doesn't. I'm going to make sure more money goes here. I'm going to get rid of this ad. But like Superside was dealing with this with so many different companies. Like a lot of the work we do is supporting performance marketing teams with their massive amount of creative they need created for Meta and all the other platforms. And we thought, you know what, there's an easy way for us to take this data and use it in a way that shows the creative, the CMO, the person that's not in Facebook Ad Manager, what creative is performing. And we built it, and it's called Superads, and it's out now. You should go check it out. If you're a marketer and you want to know which of your ads are performing and you want a UI and a UX that's like super easy for anybody, not just performance marketers, but like your creative director, your designers, your marketing ops people, they can all get in this tool and be like, great, this is the ad that performs, and it performs well because we've evoked this kind of emotion. It's funny. It's blue. It has this CTA, and it basically like breaks down all the components of why that ad is performing well. And so that's like a really cool blend of like that right brain and left brain of marketing coming together in a way that's actually constructive and allows the creatives to go away and do their job better, and it allows the performance marketers to target and spend in the way that's going to be most successful for the company.
Wow,
Does that make sense?
Awesome. Yeah, it definitely makes sense. And this fits so well with other conversations that I've been having, even on this podcast. There's someone named Pranav Piyush that runs kind of a marketing analytics metrics agency where he's on this mission to kind of understand how to quantify the impact of brand and creative as well as the rest of marketing. There's this other company called Marathon that's trying to help use predictive analytics for brand creative to kind of say, hey, if I do this, what should I expect to get from it? Which is something that usually is a huge question mark in marketing, especially when we need the investment up front. So this is great because I think it helps. To me, it's almost like more helpful to the non-creatives to kind of say, okay,
100%.
what am I looking at?
Yep.
What I'm just looking at art. How could I judge art in terms of what it's going to get me. But if I see certain colors or certain elements in an ad and I know that those are going to work, I could translate that into business outcomes that speak my language. And I think it's the translation part that I think is the most vital here to get these two sides of the brain, so to speak, to be compatible.
Yeah.
And
And think about it, like if a performance marketer is looking at this data in a very like creative, that's showed in a very creative way. Like they can look at the ad and like be told, look, this is the CTA, this is the color, this is the humor. You know what? They're going to be able to write better briefs. They're going to be able to speed up the creative process. They're going to be able to get the creative that they want and need out of their teammates. And in the past, this has been one of the greatest tensions between performance marketing teams and creative is creatives don't think the performance marketers are good at articulating what they want and need, so they can't translate the vision. But like this tool really solves a lot of that problem and reduces that back and forth.
yeah, it also made me think of something that a disconnect that happens even within marketing, like you said, performance and creative, which is like the performance marketers tend to think of the plan, the execution plan, the tactics, the channels, how they're going to measure, and then the creative that goes into that machine is kind of the afterthought at times of like, yeah, do you have the ad for me? Like we're ready to go, as if the thing that's actually going to give us the results is the least important, when actually that's the thing that requires the most deep thought into, what are people going to be looking at and be compelled to click on. And yet the creative side, to a fault also to some degree, is prioritizing the creative over the plan and how we're going to distribute it and how it's going to land in front of people, as opposed to just thinking of the clever tagline or kind of the way that the design is going to come together. And this is maybe that way of telling performance marketing, okay, I need to include a mental process within the planning of this campaign. I need to include the creative part of it as in a vital way, the way the other parts are. And the creative side also, I need to include how this is going to drive business goals and not just get a laugh or get an emotional reaction, but how this is going to drive business goals. And if I'm doing that, then of course I need to think about the tactics and the execution plan and the distribution and and all that as a part of the package. And that's another important way that this can be bringing those two sides together. Very cool.
Yeah. It's also a good marketing lesson for all of us, in that, frankly, I think a lot of Superside success to date has been from its incredibly strong inbound marketing programs and paid media. And when I joined this company, I was absolutely blown away at the partnership I saw between our creative leader, Piotr, and our performance leader, Andy. The two of them had a really unique relationship in that they understood and they respected one another's crafts in a way that I hadn't seen at other companies before. And frankly, that like positive synergy between the two of them is what allowed like the company to grow so fast. And so it's again, that marrying of the two sides of the brain to create outcomes, marketing outcomes that are way better than if people are operating their own,
Very cool.
ways.
Yeah. I mean, that relationship can be a deal breaker if it doesn't work, and it could elevate everything if it does. So I completely agree with that. I am wondering on a technical level, was Superads developed more as like a selfish like solution to an internal problem? Is it seen as a marketing tool also to kind of bring in business to Superside, or as a separate revenue generating offering? How does it seen within the company?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Number one, I think it was sort of created and used. We were customer number one. My performance marketing team uses Superads all the time and have found it incredibly helpful. And so in beta version, we were able to effectively like build it to what we needed it to be, knowing it's what our customers needed. And honestly, like I said, when at the beginning, it's like Superside does a lot of work for demand gen creative teams. And we understood really like the pain points between the creative team and the performance marketing team. And we felt like we were in a really unique position to marry those minds. And that's sort of where the idea came from. But yeah, we were customer number one and we use it a ton. For me, as the brand focused CMO, it's an incredibly helpful tool. Incredibly helpful tool. I don't want to go get on Facebook Ad Manager. I know there's a lot of marketers out there like me that have led creative teams that would find this incredibly helpful.
Awesome. Awesome. So I want to shift the conversation to something I've been aching to talk to you about, which is kind of just, I came from the agency world. I was the head of brand messaging for a tech branding agency in the strategy team. And kind of the thing called agencies, right? Creative agencies, design agencies, it's going through a bit of a, I don't know, a bit of a revolution or a bit of an evolution where so many brands, especially, the companies that understand the role of brand and creative well, are looking to build in-house studios, even branding them as their own thing. But at the very least, a in-house design service that is meant to serve, obviously, the design and creative needs of the company, as opposed to always outsourcing, kind of default outsourcing that whole discipline, which I think used to be the common practice, especially in B2B. Why do you think that happened? Like, what brought about this change? And maybe what are people seeing the benefit from and why? As someone who's, branding yourself, which we'll get to in a second, as the creative team for the creative team, meaning you're essentially complementing in-house creative. So it kind of depends on this trend to really build your business. How is that trend coming about, and what is there to gain from it?
So I think that, the in-house creative team came about because one, external agencies are extremely hard to work with. We all know that. They're sort of dinosaurs, right? They're like slow moving, they're expensive, they tend to be self-serving and want to like flex their creative muscles and like come up with the coolest campaigns. And ultimately, brands over time started realizing, wait, it's a lot easier, more cost effective, and the talent is entirely ours when we build an in-house creative team. And that talent can get to know our brand, get to know our voice, and create stuff that is on brand faster and more efficiently than if we're working with some dinosaur agency. And so that, like, for me, I've never worked for a company that didn't have an in-house creative team. And I've been in business, since like 2003. I started working, so it's been around for quite some time, but it's building. And you're right. And today, most businesses, if you're over 50 people, like have an in-house creative team. So what are the downfalls of that though? Right? Like if you commit to this in-house creative team, there's all the benefits that are really obvious that I just shared. The downside is like your bandwidth is constrained to those people, to those humans. And it is more often than not that you have more creative needs than you have bandwidth for. It is the bane of every creative leader's existence. And the challenge is like your creative team ends up becoming a bit of a bottleneck and a blocker and, not allowing the business to move as fast as it wants to. And so in-house creative teams have a couple options. One, outsourcing to an agency, which is like challenging and has all those hardships. Using freelancers that are totally unreliable and don't know your brand well. Or there's another option, and it's something like Superside. And Superside was really built for the in-house creative team, to be their partner. And yes, our tagline is your creative team's creative team. Because ultimately, every great creative team needs help. And what we offer them is a flexible, scalable partnership that allows them to call on creatives. We employ, they're not freelancers, we employ top 1% of creative talent around the globe. and you are able to access your creative team anytime you need to meet additional bandwidth, whether that's video assets, motion graphics, anything at all. Like literally Superside can do it all for you, but we're built to make that in-house team the hero. Unlike an agency that's really built to like kind of make themselves the hero. You've probably worked with agencies. I've worked with a lot of agencies. Love-hate relationship all the time. But this is just a different model and a different way to help that in-house creative team be successful and do the jobs they were hired to do, rather than just being bogged down by tons of work.
Yeah, it makes so much sense. And the people that are in-house right now that are listening to this know exactly what you're talking about, because
Totally.
and
Yeah.
the team I work with most closely is the brand design team, because of how many tasks they're being asked from every department in the company. It's not even just marketing, it's just everywhere. Partnerships, HR, internal marketing, everything, product launches, even product branding, right? Things like that. And I found also, just to deepen like your point, it's not just like 9 to 5 work, meaning there are waves where there are big conferences, big trade shows or events that just have literally hundreds of assets that need to be made over the course of a short period of time, in addition to whatever's already happening. And then or a website redesign, and suddenly every single thing needs to be turned upside down, or, individual initiatives or projects that are just very labor intensive. And then there's also times where you have deep strategic creative work, and then a ton of non-strategic creative work that it's just make 70 different versions of this, right? And that's also not the type of thing you hired an in-house creative ninja. You like poach them just to be your guru, right? In-house. That's not the thing you need them for, right? So there are all these kind of cases that are coming up all the time, month after month, where the in-house model is correct. I believe so. And I'll even explain why in a second. But the specific needs that come up are always, there's always kind of something wrong, or something that's just not the right fit that needs to be supplemented. So the idea of the creative team having kind of their own team in their back pocket is really compelling, and I get it.
Totally. We work with some of the most notable brands on the planet. Like, our customers are everyone from Google to Meta to Amazon to Vimeo to literally you name a big tech company, we work with them. And those companies didn't hire their badass creative directors and designers to like build 70 versions of things. Like, and that's what's cool about Superside, is we allow your in-house creative talent to do the job they were hired to do, to be amazing. And then simultaneously, like, we employ 700 creatives around the globe, and we're also giving them incredible opportunities to work for the world's best brands. So like someone in, Poland wouldn't normally get the opportunity to like work for Google, but they get to now. And so it's just a really cool ecosystem of like talent supporting great talent.
That's amazing. Also, just seeing both angles of it as a CMO, to kind of see how you can impact things from all these different angles. And the thing that, I was going to mention before, one of the reasons why in-house makes so much sense to me is that the fact that design is often misconstrued as kind of a cosmetic overlay, to whatever business or marketing initiatives or whatever. It's like, we already figured out the smart stuff. Now we just need a designer to like make it. And you can tell when something is just slapped on the top, or something is built strategically from the bottom up, where everything about it was done deliberately. And it's so hard to know how to be deliberate in all of these little ways that ultimately are how a brand stands out. If you're not in it, if you don't have regular access to the thought leaders inside the company, if you don't live and breathe and even, sit in the same rooms with the people that are, surrounded by this all day. That's the leg up I think the in-house teams get by turning everything they do into this, just way more strategic output, as opposed to often what an
Hmm.
agency is trying to do is like, let's just think of the most creative version of whatever this brief is telling us. It doesn't, I don't even know how to make it more strategic than, than what the brief's saying, because I'm not there. I just know how to make things creative. So I'm just going to go over the top creatively because that's what they're paying me to do. And that's not actually what the job is. And that's where the unlock
Yeah.
is for me about that.
Yeah. Yeah. We see it, live it every day.
That's right. Very cool. So there's one more part to this that I would love to hear from you about, which is
Yeah.
you recently rebranded. Superside has a whole new look. You just mentioned, your new tagline, your creative team's creative team. First of all, it's beautiful. I just saw it right before we jumped on the pod.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear kind of what the thought that went into it, what you're hoping to achieve, what you want, your customers, your prospects to take away from it. Take me into the brand or the new brand.
Yeah. When I came to Superside, the biggest thing I noticed as a marketer was like the difference between our brand, how we spoke about ourselves, how we looked and felt versus our customers. And like I mentioned, like Superside works with the best, biggest, most incredible brands on the planet. And what I wanted our rebrand to reflect was I wanted the look and feel of Superside to reflect the work that we create for our customers. I wanted our customers to be able to come to our website and see themselves in Superside. And I didn't feel like the old branding did that. And it was sort of getting to a point where it was hindering our growth as a company because it just, people want to work with companies where they see themselves in them and they have the trust and the trust is they're inspired by the trust that they feel when they're getting to know a brand. And so that's really what this new brand is. I think it's a more accurate reflection of the work we create for our incredible customers. I think it really articulates well that value prop of like truly being your creative team's creative team. And ultimately that was the goal. And I think the team did an absolutely incredible job on this. When I do rebrands, I really love to retain some of the company's DNA. So whether that was like DoorDash, I really wanted to retain the red of DoorDash and also to tell Tony Xu, the founder's journey of how he became the leader of that company. With Klaviyo, it was very much about creating a brand that reflected that founder's desire to help people own their own destiny as business leaders. And with Superside, it was very much like we are founded by a few amazing men out of Oslo, Norway. They're Norwegian. They're super outdoorsy, which I can relate to. Probably part of why I ended up at this company. But we're also totally committed to AI. And so when we thought about like the visual of this rebrand, we wanted to take the nature loving element of our company, of our founders. We wanted to make it an AI first brand system, which is probably a podcast in and of itself. And then also wanted to retain some of like the DNA of the brand. And the old Superside brand was all based in space. And we always use this little astronaut character in all of our different marketings. And when you look at our new rebrand, you can see we've retained the astronaut. We've brought more nature into our imagery. And I think it's a really beautiful reflection of like a founder, the business purpose, and also like a little bit of the visual DNA of the brand over time.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm looking at an astronaut sitting on a boat fishing at the bottom of the page.
Totally. Yeah, exactly. And like we use the astronaut in a lot of different ways. Like ultimately, every rebrand, and I'm sure all your listeners who have led rebrands, you usually anchor on a certain point or on a certain word or a certain purpose. And really, like, Supersides, like, really hangs its hat on the fact that it provides opportunity. More opportunity to be creative, opportunity for creatives that work with us to, like, do the best work of their careers, and ultimately, like, every creative person on the planet to be more creative. And so we love that the astronaut really stands for opportunity. And so anywhere you see him used on the site or in our marketing or at trade shows, like, it's really a symbol of opportunity, but in a fun and quirky way.
Yeah. Listen, I love what I'm looking at here, and it resonates with me specifically because, I joined Island where I am as the person who named the company and kind of had the initial vision of what this thing could be from the very beginning, 9 months before we launched the product. And for me, there was this idea of work being in its most natural state. And I don't need to give you the whole pitch, but there was this word natural that meant a lot to us, that the way work is done right now is very unnatural in the enterprise space. There are all these tools that are getting in the way and logins for your logins. And it's just like, just do the work, right? Just get to work. And Island unlocks it. Like, it puts work in the right place. And I wanted to, and as we built our team, but also from the very start, we wanted to kind of give off this feeling, which was very uncommon for an enterprise, that you're in this kind of natural space. And we do this also in trade shows and field events, where we create this natural environment using the senses and getting, structures out of the way, just kind of walk into the new place. And green is an important color for us, obviously signifying nature and being kind of a non-tech. It's kind of the zag, right? Non-tech world. So there's a lot here that resonates with me and sends those subtle messages of, here's your opportunity, here's an ode to nature, right? Here's this place where you feel like I'm at home or I'm at peace. I see a lot of that in this. So very well done.
Absolutely. Thanks. Thanks the team. The team is always the team. Like, as every good brand marketer knows, like, the best thing you can do is hire well. Like,
that's right.
The team knocked it out of the park.
Very cool. Anything else to add, to promote, to push, to bring up?
No. I think just keep doing what you're doing. I think the art and craft of brand, I think, is growing. Like, I think we have ridden a wave of performance marketing over the last 10 years, and brand is making a comeback. Like, brand marketing, when I sit in board meetings and I listen to friends that are business leaders, like, brand is coming up a lot more than it ever has before. And I think we're going to see more respect, more a resurgence of the craft of brand marketing. So anyone that has felt dismayed over the last 6 to 10 years while you're being a brand marketer, I think your day in the sun is coming, which is cool for all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that goes back to this kind of renaissance of turning brand into a business driving discipline where there's metrics around it, and where it's not kind of me too, but it's, here's your seat at the table. We need you, not a nice to have. And I was just talking to an agency, a creative agency last night, because we are also, looking to do some creative stuff on our own, I meant, who said, like, there's either the founder or the CMO that shows up who knows why this matters and says, let's do something great. Or there's the founder / CMO that comes around 5 years too late and said, we tried the performance thing and we came to the conclusion we need brand to bail us out. So it's almost like it's either you're either early to it or you're late to it, but you're gonna get there one way or the other.
I love it.
And better to figure it out early than late. So very cool. This was so much fun, Jen. You have
great. All right, thanks.
Such a wealth of knowledge and obviously experience to share. I'm going to be listening back to this myself. I have a lot to learn from you, and hope this rebrand makes a big splash and continued success over there at Superside.
Thank you so much. I super appreciate it.
Take care.